All right, here we are again. Welcome to Nothing But Worry. I'm Lance Ash, and this on the sofa beside me is my wife Bonnie.
Hello.
And we have some topics written down, but before we get to them, let's just sort of ease our way into things. Been a pretty rough week. Well, not, it's just busy. My job is go, go, go. So how about you, Bonnie?
Uneventful.
Yeah, but you've had a rough time.
Yeah, I had one of my shots for pain. The first couple of days, it causes inflammation at the site of the injection. So, today I just finally gave in and took one of the steroids to try to reduce the inflammation. And he wouldn't give me more than just one.
One shot.
Yeah. I was supposed to go in and get two, and he said he didn't want to with some of the medicines I'm on and my reaction. My body always, I have an overactive autoimmune system. So if you think this week was bad with one, imagine how bad it had been with two.
It took me all week to get back into a regular sleep schedule, feeling okay schedule.
And then today happens.
And then today I get home, just, worn out from the work week. I get home and I slept about an hour, maybe an hour and a half at the most. And then I was up and, just throws.
You can't go to sleep.
No.
Up again.
Yeah, and plus I got, just so determined to get things done. I have art to do, and I have some reorganization schemes that I'm trying to put into effect for my room and in the studio. And, you just want to get things done on the weekend instead of just vegetating, which I wish I could vegetate too, but I'm just not that kind of person.
The thing is with you, your schedule is so bad, and then everybody else has the weekends off too, so they assume, hey, we have the weekend off, and everybody's like us. And people make demands on you on your weekends, and it's always so difficult. I mean, just my folks coming over the other weekend, my dad was overseeing my son's computer stuff. Adult supervision is what he calls it, but my son had to install a card and some other stuff, and that took time out of your schedule, and people don't understand how difficult it is for you to adjust your schedule, even when they're, bringing gifts and trying not to get in the way.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that a little bit. That having visitors over, even though it's family that I've known for 30 years, it really throws me off because I'm just not a people person. And when I have people over, especially in my space, I feel like I have to put on a show and I have to be sociable and all this stuff.
But it's easier to have people over here than for us to go somewhere.
Oh, hell yeah.
Because then we have this obligation. Well, you're here. Exactly how many minutes do you have to be here before it's too early to leave? And you're rude for leaving. And did you offend the wrong person?
You don't want to overstay either.
Wrong thing? And then you don't want to end up like certain couple we used to be friends with.
And plus, if you're at somebody else's place, you don't feel comfortable. You can't go, excuse me, I got to go to the bathroom. Or, hey, everybody, since there's a lull in the conversation, how about I put this piece of music on that I know of? You're at their place, so you don't know where anything is. You can't go to the bathroom. You can't, and
you're not comfortable, and you're having to put on a show.
Yeah.
And it's fatiguing. There's nothing so tiring as having to pretend.
Yeah. And plus, I've gotten to where I take Kratom every weekend. And when they came over, I felt like, well, I have to take a little bit of extra off schedule. So I was really up more than usual.
But it actually did help you relax.
Oh, yeah. It does. But the problem is that stuff, it really does tear your stomach up a good bit. I was just off my game a good bit afterwards. And
Again, it fucks with your schedule.
yeah.
So this week, Reed was at work, and Reed is on her feet all the time, going between the different surgical wards. And she gets a call from her supervisor. Reed, your grandmother's here to see you. And Reed's like, who? And she didn't want to see anybody because she has no time. None. She's lucky if she gets a break. She's lucky if she takes lunch. She doesn't even eat at work. I mean, and she's just go, go, go. And if her job doesn't get done, it doesn't get done. And when you're dealing with surgeries, that fucks with people. That fucks with their lives. Mm-hmm. And whenever they have to go on vacation, another person has to go and cover them. And they have to divide up all the duties. Because if it doesn't get done, people get fucked up. I mean, at one point, Reed was doing intake for transplant stuff. Mm-hmm. Where they have to sign off on the what it's packed in, the temperature that it arrives in, the time, what the time to countdown is, all this kind of stuff. And she said it was the most stressful thing she'd ever done. And that was covering somebody else's shift. And if she doesn't get her job done, she stays until it's finished. And come to find out, it's your dad that stopped by to chat up things. And she's like, I'm not here to chat. I'm here to work. He doesn't understand this. And she doesn't like playing the game any more than we do. And she calls it the, why bless your little heart conversation. It's just, you put up with this and you're like completely insincere when you're having these chats.
Does she ever, or has she ever, been directly or indirectly involved with an ongoing surgery where she has to read, we're in the middle of this surgery, can you go get more blankets or more?
No. Her job means that, like, they had the inspectors come in and everything has to be up to date. Nothing can be expired. And she's trying to deal with people and inventory control. And when people have access, multiple people have access to a single area, they fuck shit up. They don't put things back where they belong, which means that the date-sensitive items, which are everything when you're dealing with medical equipment, basically you can end up with something expired, and that ends up costing the hospital for safety. And it can fuck up somebody's surgery. But no, she is not in such demand that... See, the point is you never let it get that bad, you know?
Yeah, well, that will lead us directly into one of the topics that we wrote down, which is, I said earlier tonight that isn't it funny how the two people that we know of who would make the best parents are not going to be parents. Each of our children would make an excellent parent because they are caring and they are attentive and they would make ideal parents. But
they're intelligent, they're practical, they were raised a certain way where there's an attention to detail of caring for people's lives. I remember your sister whining and moaning about something, and I realized that she had no schedule at all for her kids. She, who had complained that her children needed to be broken when they were little, and that they had to stop crying, and that they were going to conform to a sleep schedule, etc., because, you know, it was their sin nature coming through. She subscribed to the whole James Dobson Focus on the Family nonsense. So she was so convinced that they had to be broken and submit to her will with regard to sleep schedules as infants that she didn't set schedules when they got older.
Well, also, our children weren't raised with the philosophy that it is the child's duty and responsibility to obey and bring honor and glory to the parent, and it's a top-down authoritarian relationship. We had children because we wanted someone to love, and we wanted people to share our life with and our way of thinking. It wasn't like, well, we're going to have children so that we'll have somebody to shit on,
There was more to that. You and I
Well,
really did respond to a biological urge.
well, I
Well,
always
we
wanted
met
to have
each
kids,
other.
and I met you. I was like, this is the person I can have children with.
Exactly.
Well, that whole right wing fundamentalist Christian shit that I was raised with, they just thought that there was too much emphasis on children, and children had too much emphasis in our society. Somewhere around, this would have been fifth or sixth grade, the UN had declared the International Year of the Child. I think that was actually 1979, so it was a couple years before this. But our Bible teacher at that private school said that he just thought it was just shameful and a perversion of the natural order that the UN has declared the International Year of the Child. And it's just, that's the attitude. We didn't raise our kids with that attitude, with that philosophy.
Awesome.
So, but okay.
Well, we were talking about the fact that we think our kids would be good parents. They would be responsible. And I'm reminded of the movie Idiocracy. The beginning, how did we get to this point of all this land of idiots? Where all the intelligent people went, oh, there's only, going to be one of us, and the others were breeding like rabbits. And unfortunately, there is now a return to this unrestricted reproduction, pronatalism movement.
Mm-hmm.
And not all of them are right-wing nuts, but the majority of them are. And I'm glad our kids aren't having kids, because everything's so fucked up in this society.
Yeah, I mean, I just, the world is heading towards a major calamity,
Yeah.
whether that be food abundance collapsing, or a huge global plague, or war, or environmental catastrophe, or
It's gonna be
it
a
could be anything.
combination
Yeah,
of
it could,
things.
yeah, or dictatorship, or war, anything. So, or a meteor could, I mean, an asteroid could hit. I mean, I just don't want my children to be burdened with having to look after some wee ones.
One of the things that you mentioned earlier was this whole, what would happen if Jesus came back today and saw what his followers were doing in his name? He wouldn't be able to stop throwing up. And you took that idea and said, what would aliens do if they came down and saw us? They probably wouldn't be able to stop throwing up. They probably would look at us and go, my God, these idiots have no idea how to properly use the resources on their planet.
They make their decisions, or they blunt the edge of their decisions based upon superstitions that stretch back 5,000 years, 10,000 years. Well, we can't offend these ancient superstitions because that forms the basis of our society, our culture. So we'll just have to die, rather than offend somebody's feelings or shake up the system so much. Even the most even the most ultra progressives and liberals, they still have a lot of homage and reverence and pay lip service to religion and tradition for tradition's sake and superstition. And it's just, we can't have a meaningful dialogue on climate change because that goes against their Christian beliefs.
What's worse are those people who think that if they do certain things, they'll force God's hand that He'll send Jesus back, the second coming, and it'll be the whole Armageddon, end of the world
Well,
scenario.
I have heard basically Republicans and fundamentalist Christians say, well, if we just let things get as bad as they possibly can be, then the Lord will have to come back. And they actively root for the end of the world. They
root for war in Israel.
Yeah.
They egg them on.
All right, so we have a couple of topics here. One of them is, now why aren't the other ones on this list?
I don't know. You're the one in charge.
I have
of
them.
this.
I had, well, they're on a different piece of paper, but
there's
I know, but I have some here. We'll go over the ones here. Our son is going to have to go for jury duty on Monday. So it's the first time he's been called for jury duty. So he'll have to sit there for hours until they decide whether they want him or not for the actual trial. And it's no fun sitting there being bored.
You had to report at 9 a.m. He has to report at 1 p.m., which was the time they let you go.
Well, you remember one year, it was around Christmas time, and we were there for 8 or 9 hours, and it was dark, and this is at the county seat, and on the main street outside the courthouse, they were practicing or getting ready for the Christmas parade, and you could hear the band and everything, and it was dark and cold. I remember you calling the courthouse and saying, "What is going on? Why isn't he home yet?" And the clerk of court's like, "Well, we're still pooting around. We'll make a decision soon." And finally, they let us go. It was after dark. I don't know how late it was. Maybe 10, maybe 9. And so
I called at 7, and you weren't home until God knows when that night. It's ridiculous. I would have been going, "Excuse me, I need my heart medicine."
Well, so when he goes, it's probably going to be the second trial of the day. I doubt they can get through more than two trials in a day, proceedings in a day.
No, they only schedule one at a time.
So why would they be starting so late on a Monday?
Because they learned from the last time that you went in just a couple of weeks ago that they still do negotiations while in the courtroom.
No, there's no learning. This is just the way they do things.
Oh.
Maybe, I don't know. It could be any number of reasons. But anyway, so that'll be fun for him. And so let's see. Okay, I know one of the other topics on the list was you had mentioned something about Trump administration wanting to start its own news service, White House-based news service. And I said, well,
I wasn't able to follow up on that. I didn't know if I'd read that correctly or not.
Anyway, I said Joseph Goebbels is back from the grave. And you said, that sounds like that Blue Oyster Cult song, Joan Crawford. And so I sang, Joseph Goebbels has risen from the grave. And you said, oh, that'd be a great parody. You write the lyrics out and everything.
Yeah, I mean, the Stephen Miller quotes alone that you could add to the song would be horrifying and Goebbels-esque.
Well, in the video, you wouldn't even show images of, like historical footage of the Nazis or Goebbels. Just show Stephen Miller, like, black and white.
Yeah. He's a disgusting creature.
So that was a topic, and
what are we avoiding this weekend?
yes, that's another one. Next one on the list is my sister and mother are back. My parents are divorced. So my mother's too old to live by herself. My sister was living with her. And when my sister got married to this guy in Montana and moved out there, she took my mother with her, and they've been gone several months. Well, they're back. 2 reasons. Number one, to further take care of some business at the house, prepping. My sister said they're getting more stuff together to take back to Montana.
Yeah.
But also, separately, my sister is organizing another big family reunion over my dad's place. And so she sent us an invite, and I'm not going. And I'm just going to go ahead and say flat out, I have no interest in going. I don't want to see any of those people ever again. I have no interest in seeing any of those people ever again. I have no connection with any of those people and haven't for decades. I served as a pallbearer at my grandfather's funeral, but that was about it. I can't remember. Oh, I know. I know the last time I got together with those people. It was when they were preparing my grandfather's house for sale, and they decided to have a family get together over there, and they hired a photographer to take pictures of everybody. And we went on a hayride and all this business. But when you look back at those photographs, our kids were about maybe 13 and 11. So that's been a long time ago that I saw any of those people. And I've just grown apart from them.
We have a picture from that time, and I remember now, because the outfit I was wearing was something I would wear at the library when I was on the board there. And so that's been a very long time. The kids were not out of middle school.
Yeah, it's easily been 15 years ago, maybe more.
Yeah.
But I just, when I was a little kid, the extended family was important to me.
The family tree chart.
Yeah, my father was big on not just the immediate family, not just on his immediate family, but the extended family. His aunts and uncles and all their children and
Your
all.
mom made you a family tree once, right?
Yeah, my mother had like the little 1 by 2 inch school portraits of all the cousins, and she had arranged them on a piece of construction paper and put it in a frame so that we would remember who everybody's name was and how they were interrelated and stuff. And when I was a kid, that was important because we were always getting together at my grandparents' place. But as I got older, I just lost interest in any of them.
It's
And
more
plus,
than that.
plus,
We changed.
well, my political affiliations,
Your
my religious affiliations, cultural, everything changed away 180 degrees away from all those people, and I have no interest in seeing any of them again. I have one cousin, my cousin Jason, that I would maybe want to see. And to be honest, I'd only really like to see him so that I could have him to come over and say, this is my house, this is what I've accomplished, this is what I'm doing now. But that's about it. The other cousins, I have nothing in common with them and no interest in seeing them. So,
It's going to be at your dad's house, and your dad had a Trump for the last couple of elections when Trump ran. He had yard signs.
He has the Trump flag up in his garage.
And he has the Trump yard signs in his curio cabinet, collectibles cabinet. And most of those people over there are Trumpist. Maggots.
I'd say 99% of them are,
Yeah.
if not 100%.
And it's disturbing to be around people like that. It's really disturbing for me to be around the family members who know things about us, like your sister, who knows that my sister died because they believe that anti-vax bullshit. She could have had the vaccine. Instead, it took her 5 long months to die, 100 days on a ventilator. And she went through 5 hospitals, and it was hell. She never went home once she went to the hospital. Then there's people like your father who know that Peter was deadly ill and that he was on ACA, Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act insurance, and they don't give a shit. about their own grandson. They vote for a party that says, well, we're going to overturn the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, as soon as we can. We're going to try it. They tried it in Trump 1.0. John McCain was the vote that said, no, you're not doing this. And they're going to try this bullshit again when they get to a certain point. They're going to try to defund it. And these are people who voted against their grandchildren's own interest.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that repugnant as hell. My bitch of a bio mom said, well, I got mine. That's all that I care about. Meaning her Medicare.
Yeah.
And she
Well,
doesn't
also,
realize they want to do away and define that shit too.
well, also, it's the sort of like, casual racism, not actively burning crosses in somebody's
Racism
yard,
light.
but just sort of like, well, you know what they're like, or well, of course she would say that, she's whatever,
They're all thugs. That's another one of the phrases.
Well, years ago, when I was working up at Duluth, I couldn't drive, and Bonnie couldn't drive me to work one night, and my dad had to drive me, and he had his girlfriend with him, and so we're chatting on the hour-long trip up to work, and I'm telling him stories from work, and everything, and I mentioned that this woman had come up to me and asked me, "Why do you work so hard?" And I was telling the story to sort of brag on myself, to be honest. But I say that she came to me and said this, and my dad goes, black woman. And I'm just like,
Oh my God.
and in front of your girlfriend too, who's
5 years older than me.
you're roughly my age.
Yeah.
You're going to say this kind of thing. I mean, it just...
That tells me that she's fine with that kind of racism.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not that he's saying it in front of her. It's that she's okay with it, Lance.
Yeah, and so when I do see my father, I have to be careful about the stories I tell him, because I don't want him to respond with something that I will then have to, put my foot down about.
Well,
Because I was thinking, of just recently, I was thinking of anecdotes that I would tell him if I happened to meet with him sometime. And I was thinking, well, I don't want to say this, because then he'll say this, and I'll have to say, what does that have to do with it?
My dad and I have a lot of personal chats. And a couple of years ago, he made some kind of comment that was old-fashioned sexist.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of thing that I used to hear 30 years ago in the office.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Dad, we don't talk like that anymore. It's very sexist. He goes, okay. But my dad's the kind that goes, okay, we change, we move on, we become better people. Your father doesn't accept criticism because he comes from oh, my father was a man to be worshipped and never to be questioned category,
Yeah, partly. I think about my father a lot, especially as regards to music for some reason. And I was listening to something, actually over the course of the last week, I've listened to several songs, pieces of music in the car, and thought, for whatever reason, I would love to share this with him, but I know that he wouldn't understand it. He wouldn't get it. He would dismiss it out of hand, because he has no inroad to any of this music, because you have to get a grasp on certain types of music or certain songs. You have to have already laid the groundwork to understand this, and then this, and then this.
The Michael Bolton story. Remember, he had you in the car once. He goes, "You like jazz, right?" And
Oh no, it was Kenny G.
oh, was it Kenny G?
Yeah.
And he said, "I've got this Kenny G album," and puts it in, and you're going, "Oh my God, stop!" Oh my God.
A couple weeks ago, I picked up a Henry Mancini Greatest Hits CD, And it really was, I mean, I like a couple of pieces by Mancini, but mostly this was not my thing. But he loves Mancini, so I thought, well, next time I see him, I'm going to give it to him.
I don't even know. Does he even own a CD player?
I'm sure he has one in the house. He doesn't have one.
Remember, we gave him a DVD collection of stuff, and he had said, "Oh, I don't have a DVD player anymore. I just watch TV."
Yeah, I wanted to get that. It was like a box set of spaghetti westerns, and I want to get it back. And he said, I asked him about it a couple months ago, and he said, I don't know what happened to any of that stuff. When I moved, it got boxed up and it just disappeared somewhere. But I was listening to the song Nutshell by Alice in Chains, and I was like, this is not outright dissonant that he would dismiss it. But even so, I don't think that he would get into it. But it would be cool. I don't know. I can't understand the type of mentality that says, no, I'm not going to learn. No, I'm not going to grow. No, I'm not going to try a new experience.
Yeah.
I will try just about anything. I may not wind up liking it, or I may think I'm going to like it, and it turns out, no, actually, I
You
didn't.
don't want to commit the time to it.
Okay, we can bring that up.
So my dad, in comparison to yours, is always trying new stuff.
Your dad is committed to lifelong learning.
Exactly, and it was part of the way he was brought up. His father literally had him building houses alongside him. His grandmother, his mother had him out in the garden. Everything was about learning new skills, and my dad has continued to do that. He went to a community college, multi-week course thing on how to rebuild small engines so that he could do work on his own lawnmower. This is a man who could afford just to send it out and get it done, okay?
Yeah, well, what happened is, so over the course of the last 6 months or so, I've been looking at Pinterest a lot, and it's such a great resource for getting new images, new artists, anyway. So, even though I'm not a video game person, I love a lot of the concept art that these people come up with to design the games. And I was looking at a lot of these illustrations, and I was thinking, I'd love to do a project where I do my regular. Do I keep talking? Okay, Bonnie's leaving the room to take care of some business. I'm gonna keep talking. Normally I don't color my drawings. Sometimes I'll add a little hint of color here and there. But anyway, I have a special drawing project coming up. It's going to be an illustrated text. And I thought it'd be great for this one particular project to color the drawings. And it would be so easy and interesting if I could use a computer program to color the drawings. And I thought, well, I can basically select a broad brush, all on the screen, digital, and use a watercolor application to just sort of like put layers of color. And so I was talking to Bonnie's father, and he said, well, there's a free graphics program called GIMP. And your laptop has plenty of memory on it. You can download GIMP, and then you learn how to use it. And that way you blah, blah, blah. So I downloaded GIMP, I installed it, and then I started pooting around with it. And I realized it is going to take me hours and hours of learning and experience on this thing in order to be able to do what I want to do with it. And after a while, I just realized I don't have time for this. I've already, to be honest, I've already simplified my life about a week or so ago. I dropped learning French, much as it pains me to give up on anything, much as I can't stand being a quitter. But I just finally decided I'm 55 years old and I have to focus on getting as much artwork done as possible. And I just don't have time to continue learning French. And I'm going to have to just drop keeping up with my German too. So, to spend, and the thing is, they want you, the tutorials for the most part are in video format. So you got to sit through hours of people talking about stuff that's not really relevant to what the precise function of the program that you want to use it for is. And so I tried looking up like written tutorials, and that's scarce. So I finally decided, look, this is just not going to work. I'm just going to find a way to color the drawings either with regular watercolors or maybe colored pencil, or maybe, and this is the real option, is marker. Because a lot of these guys use marker. And I'm going to see what I can do. I have, in the past, I like watercolors, but the problem is the paper I draw on is too thin to really accommodate the watercolors. So today I experimented. I took like a test drawing, and I printed the drawing on cardstock. And I did some watercolors on it today, and it seems to work pretty well, but I don't really like the way the copy looks rather than the original drawing.
How fixed? Well, first off, you need to change the DPI.
That's a good point, yeah.
Okay. But how fixed is the ink to the paper? Are you finding that
No, there was no problem at all.
there wasn't? It
No.
stuck. Oh, good.
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
Yeah, and plus, I used that blue masking tape to tape it to a board,
It makes
which I don't normally do.
The other
And it
thing
worked
is
pretty
you
well.
need to make certain that not only is the DPI as high as you can get with the scanner, you need to do it either in grayscale or color. Try both of them and see what type of gradation you have, because when you have your drawings, oftentimes you'll use different levels of lead, darkness of lead, and shade with a pencil or other type of thing. And I think that if you try grayscale or color, even though we're printing in black and white, because the printer only does black,
Yeah.
that grayscale or the color may give you better effects.
The grayscale's the best because black and white is just too
Harsh.
blunt. Yeah, it's either
And the
or,
color?
and that's it.
But the color, did you try the color option? I know it doesn't print in color.
It doesn't
but it
matter. See,
may-
since it's not a with that printer,
Yeah.
color and grayscale are basically the same thing, so it's no
Okay,
big
all
deal.
right.
So anyway, but I'm still very, very excited about the project and the prospect of doing this. But what I'm getting all this rambling to get around back to the point that I am for learning new things. I am for mastering new skills, but this was just going to take so long. And maybe I will master it eventually, but it's going to have to be in very small increments. I can't just, okay, I'm going to start taking an hour out of my day every day to do this and tutorial, you know.
Well, today you and I sat down for a brief 5 minutes, and I said, just let me look at what you're talking about in Adobe, because that's what I work in. I manipulate images, digital photography in Adobe, and I said, let me see, I don't normally use these paint tools in the way that you're talking about. And so, it is something that's a lot of trial and error. And that's what I've had to do over the years. I mean, I've got a couple different Adobe workshop things, and it takes time. And I'm amazed at the differences. My father is so committed to these things. He
Well,
can do stuff I can't even begin to do because he takes time. I mean, he's been retired since he was 50 years old or 55. And it's just,
well, this is a
it's a
recurring
commitment.
this is a recurring pattern or theme in my life as regards to new experiences. Sometimes you just swallow the whole experience with one go, but sometimes you take a little bite, then you back off. Then you try it again, you back off. And slowly you work your way, sometimes not even with a plan or with the intention, but slowly you assimilate the new experience.
Well, you also have another stage, dear. It's the grog. I have big cave and big stick, and I'm going to kill this now. I hate it.
Well, years ago, when Metallica's Black Album came out, I began to realize this method of assimilating things in my life, because that album was such a gigantic slab of music, and it was so much I couldn't take it all in at once, and I didn't. It was like so intense I couldn't listen to the
Which
whole.
one's this?
This is the one with Enter Sandman on it.
Okay, so this is what you introduced me to when you said I like metal, and you set me down with this Metallica as a group, this album, and that was how you got me into
That
listening-
particular record?
that whole thing. Yes, you had a series of video VCR tapes.
Oh yeah.
And we went through this whole thing, and you introduced me to the band.
I didn't know you
their
watched
interaction.
those.
Yeah, it was part of our early days.
Well, when that record came out, I remember specifically I had listened to one song and then back off. And then I listened to that same song again until finally I had assimilated that entire one song, and then I'd move on to the next one. Listen to the two together, then listen to the three together, then listen to the four together. And that's how I finally mastered that record in my head. And that's true with a lot of things. Books, poetry, sometimes films are that way, sometimes TV shows are that way.
How new were you to metal and rock at that point, though?
Oh, no, I had been listening to metal for years, but that record was
Why
just
was it that one you approached differently?
because it was just it was all of a piece. All the songs seemed to fit together like they were all hacked out of the same piece of stone, and they were all so intricate and complicated and weighty, and it's not like a couple years before that, when Iron Maiden's Somewhere in Time came out, I just gobbled the whole album down at once. There was no problem at all; just flowed together in my head as I listened to it. But for some reason, the Black Album was just too much to comprehend. It was just, it's like trying to I don't know, inhale a whole helium balloon at once.
They sound like different forms of worship. I'm reminded of a quote. Who's the guy that was married to Angelina Jolie? Brad Pitt.
Mm-hmm.
He was interviewed about his religion and beliefs and such. And he was brought up like us in Christianity, and he was forced to go to revivals and things like that. And at some point in his late teens, he finally went to like a rock concert. And he gets there, and he's in this huge crowd, and there's this crowd momentum and energy. You can just feel it. And he said later on he got to thinking, if I can experience this kind of elation, this kind of moment in rock, and I'd only experienced in church before, that was a moment where he said it separated things for him, where he realized that he could have those type of experiences, those types of worshipful experiences outside of religion. So why have the religion? Why not experience the other things?
Well, and also there's a sort of like, not opposite side, but sort of tangential side to what I'm saying, in that sometimes there's like some author that you're not familiar with, but you've heard about, and so you're like, well, this is somebody that sounds like somebody I'd like to get into, and so you begin to approach it obliquely, and you try it, and you realize, actually, no, this person isn't for me.
But the other week we were talking about writers and different aspects of the writers. And James Joyce, what's his big one? We've both tried
Well,
it.
there's Ulysses and Finnegan's Wake.
Yeah, we've tried Finnegan's Wake specifically. And we didn't get into those. But when I tackled his short stories, I really liked it. I liked the voices. I liked everything about it. And I know that a lot of that translated over into Finnegan's Wake. But it was different. It was presented differently.
Well, that's also an example of where you'll try something at one stage of your life and go, no, this isn't for me. This is too much for me. And then you'll try it again 10 years later, and this time you go, oh, now I get it, or now I'm ready for it. I've been experienced other things that laid the groundwork for this,
Or what was your favorite when you were that age versus this age? Mm-hmm. For a number of years, I thought that my favorite movie was X, and I didn't watch it for 10 plus years. And I went back and I rewatched it, and I thought, I don't think much of this at all.
Yes, that's very, very true.
And the difference, though, for me in that situation was that got me. That movie inspired me to take risk in my life. I went out, took those risks, and then afterwards, I realized it was only there for that moment of inspiros, that the muse that says do this, and once you do it, you don't need the muse.
That's why a lot of the time I'm baffled by people who say when they're 15 or something, they discovered this movie has blown my mind. It's my favorite movie and will always be my favorite movie. And then when they're 70, it's still my favorite movie. Sometimes
somebody your age go, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, man, it's still the greatest thing ever. And you're like,
and sometimes
grow up.
I mean, sometimes maybe that's true, but it's hard to believe that okay, I'll give you a classic example. And I've said this many times. No band has fallen so far in my estimation as Motley Crue. And I don't mean that they have degraded over time and gotten worse over time. What I mean is my original assessment of them has just evaporated. I used to love Motley Crue, and then over time I realized, no, they always sucked. I was wrong. And it's like I'll give you an opposite example. I used to read. I started reading the original Ian Fleming James Bond books when I was 13, probably, and I really liked them. And then over the course of the years, I thought, well, in my memory, I still liked them, but they weren't top drawer literature. Well, about 5 years ago or so, I reread them from start to finish, and I thought, he was a much better writer than I thought he was. As far as just putting words on the paper and putting sentences together, he was much better than you'd think he would be for that type of work.
But you started off at that level. And then you got me to read the James Bond series too.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And then you and I both read a lot of men's action fiction together. We burned through these things for a while because we would just sit down and read it in the afternoon, And you've got Archer and Spade, and then you've got Spillane,
Mickey Spillane.
Yeah. You've got all these characters. Anyway, when you read all these different types or different authors in the same genre, then you can see how Fleming might be better. for this men's action, mystery, adventure sort of thing. And definitely, when you have already sampled all these things, but when you look at him in comparison to other authors, then your ideas may change a little bit.
Well,
he was better than he had to be.
Yeah, and that's true of a lot of people. But the thing is, mainly he was what he actually was a travel writer. That's right, and the adventure and the plot and the all that is just that's the tinsel. It's actually the go to a new place, try new food. What's the new culture? That's what it's really about.
You know what we need to reread? The book about it's British. He's a newspaper man.
Scoop.
Scoop, yes.
That's a very good book.
That is a good book. Who did that? Was that Mom?
That's Evelyn Waugh.
And we need to reread that. I was thinking about that recently.
I'll tell you another one that I want to reread. I want to reread Lucky Jim by Kingsley Amis.
Oh.
Because I read that 35 years ago, and I liked it then. I probably like it much more now.
We did some of his and Martin Amis and then Doris Lessing for a while, too.
Doris Lessing is so fucking overrated. And I read one short story by her that was really, really good. But the pseudo science fiction stuff I thought was just talky, overwrought, meaningless dribble. And some of the other stuff.
The same period we also were reading Muriel Sparks.
Yeah. I'll tell you who's a good writer is Anita Brookner. I went through a phase where I was reading her books like. Yeah. I had something else in mind. When I first read Henry James, the first book I read by him was Ambassadors. And I read maybe 10 pages of it, and I thought, this is horrible. This is just the most outdated, convoluted sentence structure I've ever seen. And I put it down for 6 months. And then I picked it up again. I was like, oh, no, this is very rich. And I read The Ambassadors maybe 4 times. I think it's a lot of his stuff is really good, but at the same time it is highly roundabout and overwritten.
What about Remembrance of Things Past? Didn't you have some issues reading through that as well?
I read a good chunk of Remembrance of Things Past, and it is so overwritten and so just minutia for the sake of it.
The week that they confirmed Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I got a copy of The Jungle and tried to reread that.
Of the what?
The Jungle?
Oh, yeah, okay.
And it was, again, one of those things, stilted in language based on the time that it was written. And you think, I ended up just sending it back to the library. I was so...
Well, people always confuse Upton Sinclair with Sinclair Lewis. So I will use that as a segue from going from Upton Sinclair into Sinclair Lewis. Several years ago, I went on a Sinclair Lewis tear, and I read Main Street and Babbitt and I can't think of the other names now, but I read like 5 in a row, and he was a really, really good writer.
Who wrote Elmer Gantry?
That's one of his.
There we go.
That's a good book.
That is a damning book.
Yes,
give the listener a
well, if you've ever seen the movie ends at the halfway point of the book. There's a whole other half.
Give the summary.
Well, the summary is the character's a little different in the book. he has went to seminary because he realizes that becoming a preacher is an easy way to make a living. And in the book, there's a character in the movie. Gene Simmons plays a character that's based on. Oh, I can't think of the woman's.
Carrie Nation?
No, 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 no. Now you've thrown me off.
Sorry.
This woman was a big evangelist back in the 20s.
1920s, yeah.
And Simple, Semple. I can't remember her first name, but Annie Marie Simple, something like that. Anyway, so he's sort of down and out and looking for a job, and he worms his way into her organization, and he becomes her right hand man. He's like the warm up preacher at her traveling tent revival show, and they become involved and everything. And in the movie ends where
He
her
has been
tent-
found out.
no,
No?
her tent burns down and she dies in the fire. And he's like, I'm lost. What am I going to do? I'm completely, now I'm screwed. But all these people, her crowd of followers, in the ashes and in the smoke, they all turn to him and start reaching their hands up for him. And he looks around at them, and it's not made plain in the movie the mercenary heart that he has, but basically the idea is he has become he's the new leader of this movement, and his future is assured. Now in the book, from that point, he becomes the pastor of what we would today call a mega church, and he's just raking in the money. And his past comes to haunt him. This woman who he had an affair with or something in the past, she comes to him to blackmail him. And he realizes, if I give in to this woman, I am in her thrall forever. So, knowing human psychology like he does, he goes immediately in front of the church. This hundreds and hundreds of people who form his the auditorium for church Sunday morning service, and he just spills the beans. He says, "My brothers and sisters in Christ, I have come to you to confess I am a bad person, and I've done this horrible thing in the past, and I'm offering you my resignation because I have let you down." And he knows this is going to work, and sure enough, it does. They're like, "No, don't leave us. We forgive you for whatever you've done." And inside his head, he's going, "Yep, I've got it. I'm set, because these people will follow me to hell and back." Yep. And Sinclair Lewis was just so
He could shoot somebody on
anti.
Fifth Avenue, huh?
Yeah, it's the same thing we have today, and that book is over 100 years old, and the same shit's going on today, and always has, and always will probably.
Always a con artist. Always people willing to be conned.
Yeah, all you've got to do is just. People want a show. That's what they want. They want a show.
They want to feel like they can identify with you in some way.
Yeah.
It's like when Trump gets up in front of the stage and he makes these obviously stupid statements. Hannibal Lecter going on about showers. My black support.
And the thing is, it's all.
And the people behind him, you see them eating it up. They love it. Because if he's a fool, I can be a fool
It's
too.
all the most base form of entertainment. It has nothing to do with good government. It has nothing to do with sound political or moral philosophy. It has nothing to do with anything substantive. It is just pander to the crowd, pander to the crowd, pander to the most base instincts.
That's why he's still doing these little campaign rallies.
Instead of governing, instead of getting involved with the minutiae. I remember years ago when Clinton was president and Gore was vice president, there was, the common talk was that they are both policy wonks. and they love nothing more than to stay up late going over policy, going over the details of what they're going to do and how they're going to do it, what this function, what this branch of the government, how it should be, run. Trump, none of that. It's just this broad brush of populist sentiment, and we'll just throw everything to the wind,
So, I don't know, do you know that Clinton did what Trump is doing now? Trump has doggy efficiency.
I remember Gore being on Letterman and talking about this.
Gore was assigned to go through and to look for government waste.
For silly programs that cost money, yes.
Yeah, and there were some famous examples about toilet seats and screws.
There
and all
was
this
one,
kind of stuff.
Gore went on Letterman and he had a glass bowl. He said, this is an example of what we're wasting money on. What I'm going to do is I'm putting on these safety glasses, and I'm going to take this nail, and we're going to drive the nail with a hammer into the bottom of the glass bowl, and we're going to see the way that the glass breaks. And he does it, and Letterman's watching him, and he goes, see? And Letterman's like, what? He goes, they're spending thousands of dollars to see how glass shatters, and in what pattern, and and like, this is an example of something that's stupid, that we're wasting money on. Now,
But they did it line item. They did
right.
it line
Instead
by
of just
line,
going, well, we don't
instead
need
of just
Department of
going-
Education.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, and it happens to have these words in it. The word transition. Maybe it's helping people with disabilities transition into. Nope, it's got the word transition. We're throwing it out. Baby with the bathwater, down the drain it goes. And they're just throwing these programs out. Today I read they're closing 25 offices and monitoring stations which monitor for flooding.
Mm-hmm. Well,
We here, this whole swath from Florida up to North Carolina, got hit by Hurricane Helene. We got lucky. We had a couple of days without power. We had things down, lines down, trees down, etc. But we were lucky it skirted a little bit to the east of us. But they're talking about doing away with these programs that deal with lead poisoning, fecal matter in water, that they're dealing with, they're getting rid of suicide prevention hotlines, programs for kids with disabilities.
And now they want to totally defund PBS and NPR because they present
fair and accurate reporting.
Right. Anyway, okay, I'm going to give you some background to lead up to what I'm about to say. Even though I had made a sea change in my life when I was 20 by becoming an atheist, I still remained fundamentally a conservative, if not an outright Republican. And when Clinton was in office, I hated him. I hated him. I hated him. I hated him. I hated everything about him, just blind, unreasoning hatred without any kind of deliberate reasoning behind it. Because it was an instinctual thing.
But you were also listening to talk radio at that point.
Yeah.
It was shaping a lot of the things that you thought.
Well, not only that, but I was against social programs because I didn't think they were, it was just a bunch of conservative talking points were still in my head. Well, anyway, I've told this story before, but that changed. After Bonnie and I got married.
Why did it change, dear?
Well, what happened was, okay, the final nail in the coffin was I read this book by George Smith called Atheism: The Case Against God, which put my atheism on a rational basis rather than an intuitive one. And when that happened, I thought, I should take that same approach to my other beliefs, my political beliefs, my economic beliefs, and all my hatred of the Democrats and support for conservative policies collapsed. But what Bonnie's getting at is it's not just that. Bonnie, when we married, she's always been more progressive and more liberal, and her influence rubbed off on me. And plus, she introduced me to NPR. And that was like, I was like, you know what? This is something I've been wanting my whole life. More that post-hippie, PBS 70s feel, and it just felt like home to me. But anyway,
Also, the educational approach. NPR wanted you to understand what the issue was about and how these issues would play out in real life.
but what I was getting at is, I hated Clinton when he was in office. But then one night, it was to do with Korea's nuclear program, and Clinton had been out of office for some time at this point, and he was on Larry King, and Larry King was talking to him about Korea, and I'm listening to, and I just hated Clinton, but I never listened to any, I would never pay any attention to him. But this night I watched him, and this is after I'd started to become more liberal, and he's talking about Korea, and he's talking about the ins and outs and the minutia of our foreign policy towards Korea. And all of a sudden it hit me, my God, he is smart.
And suddenly that word policy wonk changed in meaning. You realize that people who are in charge of things need to know,
Must be, yes.
must be educated about what they're in charge of.
Yes, yes. And that's why you need a seasoned bureaucracy to stand ready to serve the intermittent politician who's in office just for 4 or 8 years. You need that 20, 30 years of
100
experience. Right. The bureaucracy is important. It's not the deep state who's trying to thwart the will of Jesus.
We seem to forget our own history here in America so readily. And what was it, Tammany Hall and other political scandals that said if we bring in a new politician and we bring in everybody who are yes men to him and his policies, then the next time a new politician comes in and he brings in his yes men, then everything has to restart,
Right.
oftentimes from ground zero. And what ends up happening is those people who are in there for that 4, 5, 10 years, whatever, that are playing yes men, are in there also enriching themselves, making money off of it. And we've seen this time and again throughout American history. So at one point or another in the 1900s, they said, the civil service has got to change. We've got to stop with these little things about, nepotism and special appointments and such. We need to have
The
people,
spoil system.
the
yeah.
spoil system needs to be done away with, and we need people who come in and they are a stabilizing force. They are educated in their field. They can specialize. They can improve. My dad was a fine example of that. He was all but dissertation on his English degree. And this was the 1970s, and teaching was fun for him and such, but the reality was there weren't enough positions out there, and they had too many doctoral students trying to find jobs. So he said, you know what, civil service is a good thing, I'm going to try it. He threw his hat in the ring, and he went to Social Security. He started off at the bottom level, and then they said, you have these opportunities to improve your position and learn within Social Security. And so my dad took classes they offered. And my dad worked his way up to Regional Land Director for Social Security, Southeast Region. And so he was the guy that was in charge. But it started off at a desk with a typewriter and forms. And then they offered him the opportunity to learn about these new computers they were going to be putting in. He had computers in suitcases he carried around. And he would go and he would learn these different programs. And then he began to understand about installing the computers, setting up the programs on the computers. Then he began teaching people. He would go in and he was part of the whole revitalizing and bringing computers into Social Security so that every person had one on their desktop. Mm-hmm. And he would go in and his teaching experience became very beneficial at this point. he would say, okay, we've got these computers and now we're going to teach you how to use them. And this is going to make your life easier. And this is how you get your system. And he set up these newsletters and then these email newsletters, and they were constantly teaching people. And when a person gets into a job and they can specialize, it benefits the employer. And the government has always provided a way for people who are in the ranks to improve their position.
Listen, I have got to take a little wee
Okay.
break, so look, we're going to pause this. All right, Bonnie, continue.
Our government systems, the things that our government does to serve its citizens, are all continually evolving because our nation is continually evolving. We have new needs that arise, changing needs, and we have expanding services and some services that we draw back and reallocate certain resources, etc. And what they're doing by just going through and crashing the system willy-nilly is like destroying a Jenga tower. You pull out the wrong thing and everything comes down. And they are destroying not only the systems they've created, they're also destroying the way that America is being perceived. We are now seen as unstable. We now are seen as a country that does not fulfill its obligations externally and internally. We are seen as chaotic and subject to the whims of a petty little dictator. And undermining the civil service system here is undermining the foundation of governance.
Mm-hmm. You're basically, it's like one of those situations where, I'm trying to think of a parallel, but it's basically like when they go in and they just take out a whole generation of people, and you've lost a whole hundreds of years of collected experience and wisdom.
We saw this with Khmer Rouge. We saw this in China.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just stupid. And it's like, I don't want to get into all that, but
to year zero. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought I had another topic written down somewhere in the house, but I guess that was it, because we talked about the Joan Crawford song, and we talked about jury duty, grandchildren, family reunion. What else was there?
I don't know. I just lost my train of thought.
Think carefully. Deep breathing. Think about something that's not related to it at all. Rod McEwen.
It's gone.
Okay. I was going around the house, I said, looking for the next topic, and I couldn't find it. Maybe,
yeah, that's where I lost my train of thought.
Maybe it was something that we talked about in the car.
Because I was talking about whatever before, and then you just started.
I'm sorry, I ruined everything.
No, you didn't.
Okay. Well, what else is happening? Is that rain still?
No, that's your fan in your studio.
Well, what have we got to do tomorrow? We got to go pick up my prescription that wasn't ready.
We don't have to. You got a couple more days, right?
Yeah.
Of course, I do go 5 at a time.
I don't see any reason to go over to Trader Joe's and get more of those pretzels. That's something that can
Not
wait.
This weekend.
Right.
Next weekend we're full.
Right.
So.
Next weekend we'll have a big report for you, because we're going to. I'm taking.
We'll talk about it next weekend.
Yeah. We're gonna have a fun outing, and when we get back, we'll tell you the whole story.
Peter's so excited about us being gone. He and Megan are gonna play house. Oh Lord.
Yeah. Let me see if there is anything else that's related. I'm gonna try to get another showing of my paintings, and the only place I know of to do it is the place that showed them last time, which is sort of this health food grocery store. And I don't think I'm gonna worry about a haircut anytime soon.
You don't want to do a joint show with someone?
God, no.
Okay.
Well, I guess that's about it. Anything?
You don't want to do a joint show with me? No, God, no.
Well, maybe with you, but not with the person you're thinking of. Now you've made me lose my train of thought. I was going to say
God damn
something.
it, man.
So what are you reading currently?
I'm still doing the Mick Herron Slow Horses.
I've been thinking about
novels.
reading those myself. if I
And
had the
they
time.
are laugh out loud funny.
Really?
Every other scene, there is just he has a certain sense of humor. It comes through, and I am laughing.
I was
as I read.
disappointed at the way that Bosch Legacy wound up. I mean, I realized they couldn't drag that show out forever, but
But do they really need to bring Maggie Q, the JFK Jr. of acting, into the Bosch universe?
yeah.
She's a terrible actress. She's a terrible health promoter and influencer and all this kind of shit. She's just lame. And I mean, again, it's another one of those roles that's being given to somebody who looks like, in real life, they'd get their ass handed to them on a platter, you know? It's like with Bosch's daughter. She weighs 92 pounds.
But she's a police officer for some reason.
And she can take down criminals. And yeah.
The thing about Bosch,
right.
as played by Titus Welliver, he's just like this tough guy, you know?
Yeah. He's
So.
burly and broad. And he's not big guy. He's just...
No, but he has a determined
There's something
determined
about
look
him
on
that
his
says,
face. Yeah.
I fight dirty.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's about it.
Really?
Think about your topic you were going to think of. What,
If I know
what was it related to? Was it political?
It was political.
Oh. Well, we've talked about politics a good bit.
It's just...
And, so anyway.
Well, 100 days down,
Lord.
1,300 days to go with this idiocracy.
Yeah. All right. Well, much as I'm reluctant to call it quits because we're having a good time here, I guess that's about it.
All right. Well, good night.
Good night, everyone. Bye.